If we ask most men, how do you feel? It's not a lack of desire. It's literally, I don't know, is a legitimate, honest answer. Because one, it's not how we're oriented. We actually have to stop and feel, which is a new experience for us. Secondly, we don't have the skill. We just don't, no one's ever taught us. Or third, we don't have the permission.
Hello, claimed listeners, beautiful women. Today I welcome the Force. I will call you the Force, Traver, because you really are. The Traver Boehm is joining us back on the Claimed podcast, and I'm
Thank you
super
for having
excited
me
to
again,
have
Anna.
him here. Thanks for
Yeah,
coming on.
thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. We keep interrupting each other. It's like, Trevor, yeah, we're both forces. So we're like, let's get into it. Yeah, Trevor, welcome. I was preparing for our interview yesterday, and I was looking at what you're doing and the podcast you've been on, and just your podcast and everything that's happening around you. And I'm like, what happened in the last 2 years?
Mm,
Because it is a force,
mhm,
And when I was thinking about what to talk to you, because most of my listeners are women,
mhm,
most all of my clients are women. I
mm,
help single successful women attract committed masculine men, the men that
mm,
you are working with.
mhm.
And so I have two questions here. Number one is, what do you think contributed to your work becoming so potent in
Mm,
the last year or two? I'm really curious about their journey and what happened there. And number two, I want you to talk about to my women, to all the women listening, about men's work and
okay.
what are men doing right now, because I see on your Instagram like these videos about, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 men coming together and doing this work. And the messages that I get from women, where are
Mm-mm.
all the men?
Mm,
Why
mhm.
are the men not doing the work when
Sure.
there's not good enough men out there? When boys become men, then we'll be
Mm,
happy. And I'm like,
mm.
men are doing their work, trust me. But I think
Yeah,
women just don't see it.
sure.
So let's start with these two questions. What happened
Mm,
to the message and why it's blowing up?
sure.
And then the second, yeah, let's talk about what men are doing in their work.
Okay. So question one, this all started a couple years ago. It gained a little bit of traction, let's just say. So I was fortunate enough to be at the right time, or right place at the right time, and I think with the right message, which was a little bit edgy, which was a little bit aggressive, and it wasn't your standard packaged men. We just need to feel our feelings and be more sensitive and be more vulnerable, and everything's going to be okay. I kind of went the other direction with it, and so men would listen. Now, if we look at the last 2.5, 3 years, what happened? We all had to deal with COVID. And I'm a firm believer that, especially with men, we need to hit a pain point, or we need to rub up against something, Anna. Like, it's the classic, well, how come you didn't stop drinking until your wife left, even
Hmm.
though you knew for 5 years you were drinking too much? We need some kind of event, something that pierces the veil of our ego. The pain needs to get too big that we can't, out drink it, out smoke it, whatever we're doing to ignore it. It's got to be bigger than we are. And so I think over COVID, I experienced over COVID this massive mass of men saying, I'm not going to get through this, or I'm getting through this, but wow, I don't have work to distract me. I don't have my commute to distract me. I'm not going to
Mm.
bars. I'm stuck at home with my partner. I'm realizing what a crappy partner I am, or a boyfriend or husband or whatever. And so for a lot of guys, it was a coming to consciousness. It was oh, wow, I now have enough time and space. There's been an interrupt. And that interrupt gave them an opportunity to take a breath and actually do some analysis and say, wow, I'm not happy. I'm not thriving. I'm not doing well. All the things that the signs were probably there for the last 5 years, but these guys were busy, or they were busy, or they were numb, Anna. And so,
Hmm.
I remember, I think this was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks into COVID. All right. So we're all locked down here in the US. It was me and a couple other guys did just an open men's call. Like, hey, anybody who wants to hop on Zoom and just talk about what they're going through, we're going to facilitate this call and it's free. And we had hundreds of men show up for it and literally say, I think for the first time out loud, I'm actually scared. I don't know if this is going to kill me. I don't know if this is going to kill my father. I don't know if this is going to kill my mom, my aunt, my kid. I don't know what to do. We were suddenly powerless in all the ways that we feel powerful.
Mm.
Like, oh, my
Mhm.
muscles aren't going to help this. My guns aren't going to help this. Like, there's nothing I can do as a good-hearted, red-blooded American male to get through this. So I think I'm going to come on the pot. I'm going to come on this call and be honest. And so they did that. And I remember getting off that call and talking to the guy who I facilitated with and going, wow, that I didn't expect that. I thought we'd have a dozen people, and here we have hundreds. So I think that was COVID for most people, was a mirror in their faces. It gave them time, it gave them space, and oh wow, now I have to deal with my own. Go ahead,
Sorry
please.
to interrupt. My work also, well, it has something to be said about, you're right, being at the right time at the right place. Because my work has also kind of blown up just as COVID started, because I came out there with a new webinar and my message was also edgy. And all these women were sitting at home, all these successful, brilliant women sitting at home alone, realizing that my clock is ticking and I better get my
Mhm,
together. And then they start
mhm,
Googling or signing up for webinars and stuff like that. So I want to ask you two questions here, just based on what
mhm,
you said, because it relates to my personal experience with my man. And
mhm,
you're like the perfect person to ask this. Number one, I the fact that you mentioned, it has to be painful. Like, if it's not fix
mhm.
it, don't. If it's not broken, don't fix it. That's like the
Sure,
masculine mantra. My man
sure.
is exactly the same, and I think, this is what not pisses a lot of women off, but this is what women just don't freaking get. I'm like,
Mhm,
how can you not realize or feel that our relationship is not going anywhere, or that
mhm,
I don't feel happy here? Like, why are you leaving things to get to this point of sometimes no return,
mhm,
and only then you wake up and start to fix it. Like, I actually well, we got on a podcast interview, a very vulnerable one, with String and I, my husband. I'm like, we talked about our relationship, because our marriage
mhm,
was wobbly, and I was like, you're not here. I'm not feeling it,
mhm,
you're not here. And he's like, okay, I need to put this in a Trello board or a
mhm.
checklist that I need to remind myself. And I'm like, our marriage is not a Trello board. I don't want to be a checklist. Like, and he was like, but it's not natural to me to think about our relationship in this way. And I think this is
Mhm,
so beautiful to, like, it's painful, but it's
mhm.
beautiful to understand and realize how different we are, how our relationship is not his priority and his mission, it's mine. And this is
Right,
where the feminine and the masculine is there. So
right.
I want to hear you
Nor
talk
nor
about
should it
that.
be, right?
Yeah.
It would drive you insane if it was the other way around. If he
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, you know what, Anna? I have a great idea for this weekend. I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna quit doing all the things in the world, and I'm just gonna love you and snuggle you and tell you how great I feel. And gosh, I'm having emotions in the moment." You'd be like, "That's really great for an hour, and then you got to go do some. You got to get out of here and go do some." So we're not
Yeah.
designed to be that way. But to answer your question, why I understand the frustration is that we are externally oriented. So many of us, or the vast majority of men, are externally oriented, meaning if I'm not getting feedback from the external world that what I'm doing is out of alignment or out of order, I'm literally not going to see it. So if you and your husband are, obviously say if you're married, if his job's still going well, if there aren't like the roof isn't falling in, if no one's sick, if like the basics are covered, he's crushing it in his idea. If we ask most men, how do you feel? It's not a lack of desire. It's literally, I don't know, is a legitimate, honest answer. because one, it's not how we're oriented. We actually have to stop and think, and actually,
Mm.
that's not the right word. Stop and feel, which is a new experience for us. Secondly, we don't have the skill. We just don't, no one's ever taught us. Or third, we don't have the permission, right? When most of us show up at work, they don't say, and this is historically, so how our fathers were raised, our grandfathers were raised throughout history, it wasn't a big coming to emotion. Okay, you guys, you're here on the factory floor. How do you all feel? Okay, Bob's a little bit sad, so we're just gonna stop production for a moment. We're all gonna cuddle up around Bob. Bob, you doing okay, buddy? Yeah. And then everyone, let's give Bob a hand because he was vulnerable this morning. He showed some emotion. It's just not how it works. And so we
Or
can make
let
light
the
of it.
tigers let the tigers wait for a moment until we
Right.
kind of recalibrate here and talk about our feelings, and
Right.
then we'll go and hunt. Yeah.
Right. We need, my grandfather was in the second wave of Normandy in World War II. And I always use him as an archetype of that's what was required of men at that time. You were going to go face your death. Most of you are not going to come home. All right. You're going to see that's going to absolutely destroy you emotionally if you feel 1% of it. So we need that as a society. We need that. And so we have this disorganized, let's call it, relationship with men and our feelings because we want men to feel, we want men to be vulnerable, we want men to share until we need them to kill or until we need them to die or
Mm.
until we need them to risk one of the two. Right here in the US, the American Psychological Association, which is like this big medical board, let's just call it, came out with an idea. This was 3, 4 years ago, that this is what, quote, toxic masculinity is, Anna. And it was like men who are stoic, men who are risk takers, men who
Wow.
can compartmentalize their emotions. It was like that and like maybe one other idea. It was just nonsense. And then two
Wow.
weeks later, all of California caught fire. There's just wildfires up and down California. And what did we do? We send tens of thousands of primarily men who we needed to be stoic, risk takers, and compartmentalized in to go fight the fires. And you know what we didn't have was we didn't have these big protests in front of the fires with people holding up signs being like, hey, stoicism's bad. Risk take this is look at all this toxic masculinity. We need you guys to turn around. We had quite the opposite, which was thank you for your service. God bless you. You're our heroes, yada yada. And yet what herein though lies the challenge. Because so we have men that we need to compartmentalize that way. But then when those guys came home, what we didn't do is give them the permission and the skill and the space to say, hey, you watched your buddy burn to death.
Mm.
How you doing? How you doing really? Okay, you know what? Fine. Fine's not going to be a good enough answer today. Fine and what? There's grief in there. Okay, good. Okay, we get that. We get that. Here's the time and space to be vulnerable. Here's the time and space to be emotional. Here's the time and space to take the compartmentalization and turn it off because you need to heal. Right? So we have this disorganized view. Does that
Mm.
answer your question? I feel like I got off on a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I think that's what, as women, it's so hard for us to understand, right? It's like, but how can you not, like, even it's so funny. Yeah, because String and I were business partners as well, which is a challenge in itself. And then we have a meeting
Oh
yesterday.
boy.
And yeah, I know, right? We have a meeting yesterday, and the whole day I was like in this content, I was in research mode, and my mood went down. I didn't want to, like, I was just like in this one of those modes, like, don't even talk to me. So he comes in, he's like, let's have a meeting. I have an idea. And I'm like, sure, because, we're doing business together. And he comes in and like, and I sit there like with my face, as a man, you can immediately feel something's not right here, like something, but he's totally ignoring it. So he's like continuing on his meeting and like giving me ideas. Here's what we need to do, and we just continue talking, not addressing the elephant in the room. And all this time, I'm like thinking, are you not? Like, are you serious here? Like, are you continuing this without paying zero attention to how I'm feeling? And this is
Hmm.
such a classical example of what you said,
Sure.
where it's like he's in a and so we kind of finished the meeting and I'm like,
Sure.
how am I feeling right now? What can you see? And
Mm,
he's like, you're clearly upset. And I'm
right.
like, couldn't we not address this an hour
Mm,
ago? Before,
mhm,
but the thing is that I have to remind myself, which is, I work with women on this, right? But
right.
I'm like, what you said, compartmentalization. It's like he is in a business meeting right now.
Right.
There's a purpose here and there's a goal. And how my
Mhm,
woman is feeling is secondary right now
mhm,
in this moment. Doesn't mean I don't love you, doesn't mean I
mhm,
don't care, but I'm going
mhm.
to address this later on right now.
Right,
I'm in
right.
a business meeting, right?
Mhm,
So it's just so, and I don't think that frustration will go away necessarily, but it's just the understanding of this is how the masculine works. And actually, what I love about your message, Trevor, why I was so excited is that, like, it's obvious that you get it. You get it, and the men are drawn to your work. And the
mhm,
question that I ask a lot of when I interview like coaches or people who do men's work or women's work, and I also talked about how so many men sometimes today, just hide behind this "we should all be feminists" slogans,
mhm,
like,
mhm.
apologizing. And I know your whole thing is about not apologizing.
Sure,
So my question for you, Trevor, is, if this was my kind of second question, then we'll talk about men's work. So for my
sure.
man who, you know, I'm sure you listen to Joe Rogan as
Sure.
as to the podcast, right? And like I look at you, I'm like, you're the Joe Rogan of men's work. And
Thank
so,
you.
you know, how do we get, because I think this is what all women are wondering who are in relationships with great men, but they're feeling that our men, and I include my husband in here, and I'm open about this. I'm feeling that my man finds it like when I actually sent him your podcast this morning. I'm like, this is, you really like
Mm,
this, but that's all I said.
mhm,
Uh, how do we get, because I see all these men coming to your retreats and workshops and everything, and it's so freaking awesome. And, men who are like, buff men. And
mhm,
you know what I realized recently? String and I were talking about he needs some help in some productivity stuff and reorganizing their life. And we went and looked at some sales pages for like coaching for men. And I found this page and I'm like, oh my God, this is the ultimate masculine sales page, because it says everything about pain and suffering and why it's
mm.
important for you, why you need to do it. But the ultimate call to action for masculine men is book a call with a Navy SEAL. And that's it, right? It's like, book a call with a Navy SEAL is what's
Yeah,
gonna make him click. And
yeah.
String's like, yeah, I want to go.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
want to talk to, like, his ultimate dream is to talk to a Navy SEAL, be a Navy SEAL,
Sure,
because all
sure.
he's interested in is like he's reading books about like drugs in Colombia, or
Mm,
like a- agents and stuff like that. It's
mm,
just
mhm,
so fascinating watching him in his maleness and be so attractive to that. But then how do we take a man like that? And my man is not some embodiment coach or what. He's
mhm.
a regular guy, like an
Sure.
average regular guy who is not apologizing for his masculinity, but he's also like looking at all these men's groups and spirituality and all this work like, that's not for me. I'm not going to sit there and be around other men, share my feelings
Mm,
stuff. So how do we get men, and especially from a woman's perspective, the ideal scenario would be to just let him be, let him find his
mhm,
way into it, or do I send him a podcast, and in what way?
mm.
Like, what would be your recommendation for women, how to do it?
It's a great question, and it's a nuanced question. I'll speak in generalities, even though it's most likely an individual decision with each individual man. And the question I would throw back to just the frame, let's say, to have women consider is, how would your man get you to do something you don't want to do? How would you want to be approached in that way? Right. And I know people are just like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. But this is going to benefit him. If he came and said to you, hey, I really want you to do this thing, it'll be good for you. How would that feel in your body? How would you take that? So we one have to recognize that we're asking someone perhaps to go against their nature. So if your husband were to come home today and say, Anna, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it is totally the thing for you. There's going to be sweaty dudes choking. out of you for 90 minutes, 4 days a week. But trust me, it's the thing. Part of you would be like, I'm projecting.
No. Yeah,
Probably not
exactly.
for
I'd be
you,
like,
right?
no.
So
Yeah.
if we look at the equivalent, like that, asking a guy to get in touch with his feelings, share his emotions, be vulnerable in that state is very similar to asking. And I know some women do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so don't email me that. Uh, Getting someone to do something outside of their nature and something that they have been heavily programmed with shame, even the fact that your husband's going to say, I won't do it, that will make me a, which is a shaming term. It will make me less than a man. It will belittle me. It will emasculate me. It will turn me into, if we go all the way down the wormhole of shame, this will turn me societally, culturally, in your eyes, into a boy, and nobody wants to a boy. Right? So I'm using strong language here because that is literally what's going on inside of most men when you say, hey, check out this podcast. Here's a guy talking about his emotions. You're literally asking him to walk against his nature, or what he's been
Mm.
programmed is his nature. Now, here's where the nuance comes in. That man who shares his emotions, that man who gets in touch with emotionality, with feelings, with vulnerability, his life will be radically better. I guarantee you. So it's this very, very nuanced way of
Mm.
introducing someone to an idea that they may not be into. How do we normally do that? Very slowly, very gently, without pushing. And for most men, Anna, if they know what the benefit is, and they know that the benefit, how it will benefit you as well, they'll be more interested in doing it. Right. So if my partner sits down with me and says, gosh, you've been really closed off for the last month. You've been working 18-hour days. When I walk in the room, I can't feel you. I know you can't feel me. Like, here's a podcast, listen to it and start feeling again. It's not going to work. But if she
Mm.
sits down with me and says, I miss you, I really miss you. And I miss feeling you. And I miss how good it feels in my body when I feel you feeling me. And I miss that. And so I'd love it if we could just spend 10 minutes tonight listening to something that I found earlier. And I'm not pushing you. I'm not saying anything's wrong with you. I just missed this. That would be a very different conversation, wouldn't it? And then if it does happen, when it does happen, to actually have that person celebrated, because again, he's going against 50,000 repetitions of sharing an emotion and getting punched, sharing an emotion and getting pushed into the dirt, sharing an emotion and being called a, sharing an emotion and being told by every man in the room, look at him, look at the little girl crying in the corner. All of the shaming, all of the putting down, all of the abuse that we'd now call it. He needs repetitions on the other side, which is, oh, wow, that was so wonderful. That felt good. Thank you.
Hmm.
I feel
Yeah.
like I can
So
trust you more. I feel like I'm closer to you. I feel like I may just want to have with you right now.
that's what we did actually. Um, I was like, what happened? I can't even remember. I'm like, hey, let's do a challenge every day for 10 minutes before bed. Let's just like watch
Mm,
something about sexuality. And when you mentioned, he's like totally on it. He's like, yes, I will do anything for
mhm,
10 minutes every day if this leads to.
mm,
And so I'm like,
mhm,
let's do. And he was since the day I met him, he was always joking about eye gazing. Let's do some eye
mhm,
gazing, when I
mhm,
talked about soft things and stuff. And guess what? I was like, hey, I bought this program and there's like an eye gazing meditation. Are you open to
mm,
that? And he's like, sure. If this leads to parentheses,
mm,
I'll do anything. So we just
mhm,
sit there and we listen to this thing. And for the first time, we've been together for 6 years. So the first time, we literally stared at each other for like 10 minutes. And
wow.
yeah, and it was quite profound, and he actually told of course, this led to amazing stuff, so that's, like, no
Sure.
question, but, he actually told me the day after that he never looks into my eyes,
Mm,
and he felt a different level of connection,
mhm,
and I love what you're saying about repetition because, yeah, you're right, and as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I've been that woman who hey, you're not present, I'm not feeling you.
Mhm,
Some women, and
mhm,
even my thought process went, I'm out of here. If you want to be
mhm,
just co-parents, we can be with business, like whatever. I want
mhm.
better. I Good enough is not good enough anymore. That
Right,
whole
right, right,
narrative of
right.
how a woman approaches a man. But I think
Yeah.
what you're saying is so important, that if we understand what's actually going on inside him, that when I
Mhm,
ask him to talk about feelings, he goes deep down that rabbit hole
mhm.
into shame, because for
Yeah,
thousands of years he's been programmed not to feel, because
right.
it was not accepted or whatever, whatever. So what is the solution here then, Trevor, in
And
terms of, yeah.
can I jump in real quick? Since we touched on I wanted to touch on
Hmm.
because we're using it kind of flippantly, but not. And I want to just make sure that we also share because I want to go against the idea that guys just want. Most men I work with are using as one of the very few vehicles they have
Mm.
for safe intimacy, celebration, full expression, their minds being actually shut off for the 30, 40 minutes of it, where they're not thinking about the 10,000 things they have to think about all day long to be productive, to be on a mission, to be on purpose, to be, is everybody okay? Are the kids fed? Is the roof? What's the mortgage? What about the insurance? Yada, yada. So I would love just to put that caveat in there and kind of remove some of the stigma of guys just want. And so really let's use that opportunity to talk about what they're getting as the quote reward in this situation is really validation, celebration, and a number of other things other than just rubbing their genitals on you. So I just want
Hmm.
to drop that in and then please continue
Yeah,
with your.
thank you, thank you,
Mhm.
because this was important. Because I was like, of course, if it leaves, men
Sure.
just want sex. It was my fault there. But what you're saying is totally right. And I actually have this quote that I share with all of my women in my program that says, "Men get intimacy through, and
Mhm.
women get through
Through
intimacy."
intimacy. Yeah.
Right? And you're totally right. This is the only time when men get to express and to feel, because
Right.
sex is great when both of us are here and present, and not just like, of course, there's that type.
Sure.
You know when your man is here, and
Sure.
this is where orgasm happens multifold, right? So yeah,
Sure. Sure.
thanks for stopping there
Sure.
and
Sure.
talking
Sure.
about that.
So you're
So yeah, my question was, I didn't even ask you who you are and what you do, Traver, but we're almost, well,
yeah.
actually, okay, let's pause here. And I'm like,
Let's
okay,
stop talking
let's
about and
right. And let's talk about, well, yeah, so tell us who you are and what you do. And actually, what's the
sure.
scope of your work? Because I went to your website, and it's like, that's why I'm like, he's a force. Like, there's
Mhm.
stuff happening around, and
Yeah.
you've got facilitators and retreats and this and that.
Mhm.
And yeah, so tell us what you do and what's actually the scope of your work.
Sure. I still hold this frame, Anna, that I'm a writer, and
Oh,
I
wow.
wrote a men's book 4 years ago, 3 years ago, actually. It's not even its 3rd birthday, and that book sparked a revolution in the paradigm shift of masculinity. It gave men a third option when there really were only 2, and the 2 options were quite dysfunctional, and they were binary, and a lot of men didn't want to just have 2. So I created this movement called the Uncivilized. The book is called Man Uncivilized. And from that movement came anything and everything that you can consider of what does a man need in this world. So we have a very robust international membership where men can find brotherhood, where men can come together and find a safe space, judgment free space to simply be who they are, to be both celebrated of like, man, I just got $100 million deal and I don't know who else to tell about this because the other guys in my life will get intimidated or, try to tear me down. Or my wife just left, or my kid's sick, or I have a dying parent, or life is hard and I need somewhere to come and actually finally admit the truth and be real and get support. So I have this membership, but we also have a coaching core of guys like, hey, you want to go take this a little bit further, work with our coaches. I have workshops where we get guys into these very intensive, we call them initiations because men need to be initiated from boyhood to manhood. There used to be a very particular, specific set of events that transitioned that man emotionally, spiritually from boyhood to manhood. This is all, I can tell you the things that we have in the works right now is also a teen program. We're getting these young men who don't have strong masculine figures in their lives. We don't have to dive into it right now, but we just had a horrible mass shooting, another one here in the US, where a young man, 18, went into an elementary school and killed 18 children or 16 children. So I want to get guys that age before they turn 30 or whatever and have challenges. So we have a teen program. We have a program called the Uncivilized Mind, where we're actually pairing men with men's therapists and calling it something different, because a lot of men get intimidated by the word therapy because it's
Mm.
shameful to need any kind of help, or that it means you're weak or whatever it is that society has said. We have we're actually just now, this is so new, I probably shouldn't talk about it, but I will, a men's recovery unit where guys who are getting sober or are sober, and a lot of men who have addiction issues actually, and I'm not going to say they don't need addiction work, they need men's work. They need to be around other men. The things that they go through, the challenges that they have as men, the wounds that they've received, the trauma that they carry is male. And so we have that coming out. It's basically, I've got a fitness program coming out. We've got, you name it, Anna. I want to have a
Wow.
guy in whatever way he's struggling, find my brand, find me, find the potency of my words and my writing, and go, no one's ever said this to me like this before. Okay, I have one of whatever problems. I know where to go. I know how to be helped and healed and supported and celebrated. And I want that for the entire scope of the male experience.
Mm. Wow. You're on a mission. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
but your mission is so grand.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I bet there's, what are some biggest challenges that you're encountering on the mission?
I will be quite honest. I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. I have
Mm.
men all day, every day reach out and tell me things that are awful to hear, that they're going through, that they're experiencing, that they're suicidal, that their mother was abused, that they were it's just, I have a lot to carry personally by being the focal point. And I'm a guy who 4 years ago sat down and in 8 weeks typed out a book, and now have a team of 12 that I manage, and I have to make sure the lights stay on, and there's insurance, and there's payroll, and there's, I'm wearing a number of different hats at the moment. But I think the biggest challenge is I'm also trying to live my life. I have a partner. I have a girlfriend. I like to do jujitsu. I like to surf. I'm trying to find where, in between moments of interviews and calls and creation and meetings and whatnot, like, where do I get to live my life as well? And so it's a lot of juggling and a lot of balance. And from time to time, I'll be quite honest, it just knocks me over. And I miss the days, I pine for the days when it was just me and a typewriter, or me and a computer. And like, God, how do I want to put this word? It was so simple the first time you talked to me. But, back then the mission was the same. I want to change the way a million men view their masculinity and experience it by taking the primal and the divine and bringing them together. And I felt like a million men would be a critical mass. And we get to a critical mass, boom, I can step back and step away. And it's starting. I have guys with their own individual groups all over the world who are taking a monthly teaching I have and sharing it and getting it out. And they're now like bringing me ideas and having their own, experiences with men and learning and facilitating. It's wild. I could go on for days. So to answer the question you asked me in the beginning, where are all the men doing the work? They are everywhere. I remember, and this may have upset your audience, but I have no problem saying things that are upsetting. A female coach 4 years ago saying more women are talking about the work and not doing it. More men are doing the work and not talking about it.
Wow.
I went, "I bet you can't say that publicly without getting a lot of."
You can say
And
it
she was
here. You can say it
and
here.
she said that, and on some level, I believe it.
Mhm.
Uh, if you take the 30 guys, who were just at our last workshop, 3 of them have social media. 27 of them are just dudes. They're fathers, they're husbands, they're CEOs of companies, they're policemen, they're firemen. They're just not actively being like, "Hey, guess what I did this weekend? You know, look at me on the beach sharing my deepest truths and vulnerability." No, they're just back to work. But these are amazing men. So they are everywhere.
Mm. Well, I'm glad that we hear this from the first kind of how do you say that?
The horse's mouth.
Yeah, because I keep talking about this to my women, and I'm like, in the work that I do with women, which is, when I look at, I mean, I think that your mission is so grand, a- and it's amazing, and that's why I'm like, that's a lot, Traver. Like, how are you holding
Mm,
it? Like, do you have a men's group for yourself?
I do. I'm
Okay.
actually in
Yeah.
two that I don't run.
Oh,
So it's
good. Yeah.
and I started one, Anna, but I started it and said, "I'll run this for 6 weeks, and then
Mhm.
I need to be a part of it." And I went to it last night, and I cried at it. Like, you guys, I've got some, I have a sick parent and was sick myself and was in an accident a couple months ago and had an employee die, and was like, I need you guys to hold me for a little while because I don't get many breaths throughout the day to work on my own and work with my own stuff. So yes, I am in men's groups.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to finish what I started before, and then we're going to talk about the solution, right? That everybody
Mm,
wants to hear. But, I keep banging on about the world because, you know what my message is? Where are all the good men, right? Like,
mm,
that's what women are asking. And I'm like, they're freaking everywhere. You just,
everywhere.
and they are in the majority. And
Mhm,
in every single cell of my body, not only I believe it, I know it to be true. And so when I work with women, we do, right, like week 3 or 4 after they join our program, we work on reframing beliefs about men, about relationships. So it's almost like what you're doing with guys, but it's on the opposite side. And so when women work on reframing those beliefs that, men are cheaters, men are assholes, men only want, I
mm,
can't trust men. I'm not, and then on the flip side, deep down, I'm not good enough for a great man.
mm.
I don't deserve love. I'm not worthy. So all of this stuff that you're working with men, I kind of take
Sure,
women through that as well. And obviously, a lot of this stuff is also generational, right? Like
sure.
women carry so much in their bodies. And I do a lot of embodiment work. Actually, most of it is embodiment. And so it is just so beautiful, Traver, to see when women do this reframing of beliefs. And then they actually, when they start looking for evidence where that new reality is true, that new reality shows up. I have women who've been living like this neighbor has been there for 20 freaking years. She didn't even notice him because she was in this belief system of they're not like where are the men, there's not good enough. All men are weak. I'm successful,
Right.
they're intimidated. That
Mm,
mindset and that frame. And so when she starts doing this work and like relaxing into her body, leaning back and watching polarity at play,
mm,
rediscovering herself as a woman, becoming empathetic about the masculine journey. And, I give them
mm,
your podcast episode, all the books. I'm like, watch the work and see what's
mm.
happening in a prison cell and what men have to go through. And she's like, whoa, and the whole
Mm.
world shifts upside
Mm,
down, and suddenly
right.
all these guys are coming to help her like change her tires or like pay for her dinners. And like
Mm,
she's like, where have all these men been all my life? I've been living under, I'm like, they're everywhere. And so
right.
that's why I do the work that I do on the obviously on a smaller scale, I think. But I'm like looking at you and I'm like, maybe I do need to like, blow up with them because my message is very polarizing as well.
Mhm,
But then I listen to you and I'm like, I don't know if I want to be. That's a lot to. So I hear what you're saying in terms of, and when we look at like the Joe Rogan, for example, you know like you can say some stuff and people, and there's so much noise and you have to be like responsible for it. I don't know if I want that, you know?
Mm,
So I want to say thank you because I really appreciate what you're doing, and I can truly
thank you.
see that weight of the world, not only to talk about issues that are polarizing and sensitive, but also get a lot of these emails, and yeah, what you're doing is incredible, and yeah, a lot of
Thank you.
respect your way, Traver.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the solution. And actually,
Mhm.
before we talk about the solution of what you see, because, we don't want men to, like, as you said, I don't want my man to be like, I just quit my job and I'm going to ravish you for like 21 days. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Please ravish me for like 4 hours and like go back to it. Go back to the protector provider role because I want you there because I can't do it and I don't want to do it. Right. But
Right.
I want to read this. This is on your website, which when I read this, I just found it so beautiful. First of all, you have this
Mm,
quote: let others be safer, for I
mm,
walk among them.
mm,
And this is like, I don't know if it's a stoic quote or whatever, but it's not a direct like, I'm a man and the world is safer because I'm in it. But
right.
it has this like graceful, elegant, I don't know if you wrote
Mm,
it, but
I wrote it.
okay, let others be safer, for I walk among them. So it's like putting
Mhm,
others first and letting them be safer because you walk among them. And
mhm,
it's like almost like a masculine, I don't know if it's a mantra, but it's just encompasses so much. Like the words are very simple, but there's
mhm.
so much meaning to it. And I'm curious, how do you what does that mean for you?
First of all, just having you read it makes me quite emotional. It hits or it lands differently, Anna. So thank you for that.
Mm,
To me, it speaks of the opportunity and the opportunity with a sacred frame without getting into dogma or religion or whatever. It's just what is the obligation, not the obligation. Sorry, let me take that word back. What is the opportunity for every man on the damn planet? And what a honor to know that every time I walk into the room, people are going to be safe there. And I'm not talking because I'm an ex pro fighter, I have a gun in my backpack, or I have a knife, or I'm somehow dangerous, in quotes.
mm,
It's because I've done my damn work. I've gone to therapy. I figured out what my triggers are. I immediately know that I'm not part of the solution. I'm sorry, I'm not part of the problem. You can get falling down drunk in front of me as a woman and pass out on my couch, and you will be safe. I can be in a situation with you and you can say no and you will be safe. Someone can come knock on my door that's has ill intent and I have enough physicality because I've trained my body and I've done the masculine things to make sure I can also handle myself that you're going to be safe. That idea, even if it's just men saying, "Hey, if something happens here, I'm going to handle it. I don't care what it is, whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's a I don't care what it is. I'm going to be part of the solution." Now that necessitates two things. Above the board or above water, it means I actually have some skill. I have some kind of skill and I have willingness to take action. Those two things, period. Willingness to take action, more important than skill. How often have we seen absolutely horrible, terrible things happen and someone sitting there holding a cell phone filming it? I've seen atrocious assaults on subways and very public places, and a bunch of people are standing around filming it. None of my guys would film it. I'm not talking about having a hero complex here. It's simply intervening. Now, below water, what does that mean? Again, it means I've worked through my triggers. I know my the holes in my game. I know my what am I looking for here? I'm struggling with a word. My blind spots. I know I have blind spots. I've worked through my issues with the feminine. I've done the therapy around my mother. or my father, whomever it is. I've worked through my PTSD. I've worked through the stuff from coming home from the military, if that's the thing, right? So just having the frame gives guys a purpose. I want people to hear this. That came out of when I was in New York, just getting hammered by Me Too, and not me personally, but just seeing like me, don't be a rapist, don't be a rapist, don't be a rapist, don't be a rapist. And how many guys I knew were going like, well, they're not talking to me. I'm not a rapist. So
Mhm.
they can yell as loud as they want. And I was like, wow, what a missed opportunity to enroll this man into being part of the solution. Being part of the solution isn't simply not being a rapist. Being part of the solution is being active, even if that activeness is just an awareness that wherever I go, I'm going to be aware of what's happening. I'm going to be aware of what's around me. Right? Just taking that frame. I was walking with my partner the other day in a park, and there was another guy on the path walking towards us, and I cannot tell you what it was, but from 50 yards away, I just had like the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I was like, I just don't like this guy. I'm not going to do anything. All I did was switch positions with her very quietly and very slowly so that I was between him and her. That was it. I wasn't like, honey, stop. You, Mr. Badman. I
But
literally just,
women, that specific action, sorry to interrupt, that specific
sure.
action of switching, women talk about this all the time. They notice it and they know what's
Hmm.
happening, and they don't say anything. But
Hmm.
we know, and just that simple act, because women are like, and he walked on the street and making sure, you're probably aware of this. But I've talked to, oh God, I don't know. I've done almost 1,000 discovery calls with women.
Wow.
And on my discovery calls, I ask them the question of, because I do embodiment work, and right on the discovery call, I drop them into the body and I ask them, how do you want to feel in a relationship? How do you want to
Mm.
feel with a man? Their number one, their number one word that they say safe.
Mhm.
And I just find that so beautiful and primal at the same time. It's
Mhm.
exactly what you talk about. It's so beautiful to hear you talk about, because, and I've studied this whole polarity thing down to like
Sure.
evolutionary psychology and stuff and tribes, and where this, I'm like, where is this coming from? Why do I need
Right.
to feel safe with it? Right. And so, because I know that most women deep down inside, what we want is to feel safe with men. And I'm not
Mm.
talking about necessarily like feel safe that he's not going to take advantage of me.
Mm.
And where, of course, that's true, because we hold that trauma in our bodies. But it's
Sure.
also that surrender. I just want to
Mm.
feel safe emotionally, physically.
Mhm.
It's everything. It's what you're talking about. It's,
Yeah.
we can look at it as like the nuclear family, the relationship, but it's also the world.
Yeah.
And it's just, when you talk about this, it's that awareness. Yeah, that like, I know my man is always scanning,
Mhm.
scanning. And especially when children are involved, like, I always picture this. It's the children, because we've got two little ones, then it's me, and then he's holding us,
Mhm.
and it's just that knowing is everything, especially after I became a mother. So I want to talk to you about the solution, but I think this is the solution. Like, when I read
Sure.
that phrase and then you went on you described it, that is the solution for men to be aware, be unapologetically male,
Yeah.
and that not only obviously heals the world. I know that's your mission there, but it creates harmonious and polarized and beautiful, fulfilling relationships when a man
Yeah.
stands strong in his masculine like that. That is
Yeah.
so freaking attractive, to the woman who really appreciates that. So I want to end by reading, because I know you're a busy man. You're on a mission, Traver, and I totally
Thank
respect
you.
that. And we're going to be done in about 3 minutes. I want to read
Take your
another
time.
another paragraph that you wrote, which I found, this, the uncivilized man. I want to read that,
Mm.
and then I'm going to let you say a few words about it if you want.
Sure.
If
Sure.
not, you can
Sure.
just tell women where they can find
Mm-mm.
you.
I have
Here's
some
what you
time.
say: the uncivilized man is unapologetically male, dangerous but not a danger, makes still his mind, makes savage his body, knows the gifts grow in the garden of his wounds, practices presence and performance, honors the men before him, the women who bore him, and the children who will inherit his earth, has equal and easy access to his head, heart, and balls, lives by the rule. There are no rules, but there is responsibility. Loves fiercely, openly, and without reservation. No strength without love is tyranny. Knows love without strength is victimhood. Lives an unapologetic life of passion and purpose. I just got goosebumps while reading that. Like,
Mm.
that is just so beautiful. Like, every phrase is so calculated, and it brings out the qualities, those qualities
Mm.
that are so inherently male. Because a woman, I
Mhm.
do not resonate with this, but I'm attracted to this. I'm like, ooh,
Sure.
that's not for me. I'm completely opposite, but I
Right.
feel that pull towards it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I would love to share, Anna, that I was at a workshop with a teacher of mine, this woman who's been in my life for a number of years and is extraordinarily influential in what I do and how I do it. It was my TEDx coach, Kimberly Weil. And she said, every business needs an ethos.
Mhm.
And I went, okay, I don't need one. Like, I'm busy. And we're at this workshop. And she said, so here's what I'm going to give you guys. I'm going to give you 30 minutes. And I want you to go outside and I want you to write 16, 20 things that encompass what you're doing and how you're doing it. And at the time, I didn't have a business, but I had an idea for a movement. That was really my first iteration was I don't care if this thing makes money. I just want to get men changed. And so I went outside and I sat there and I was like, this is not my favorite exercise. And then boom, I dropped in and wrote out 16 to 20 of those. And I sat there for the rest of the time in kind of a daze. And then I scratched off 4 or 5 of them that I didn't think fit. I just got chills telling the story. And she called us back in, and there were only 5 people, 6 people in the workshop with us. It was very small. We're in a house in Santa Barbara. She said, I want you guys now to read. Everybody's going to read theirs out loud. And we went around the room, and people were like, you need to have truth. There needs to be honesty, and customers come first, and blah, blah, blah. And then I went last, and I read those 12. And the place was dead silent. And as often the case, I thought, they hate them. Everybody thinks mine are the dumbest, right? And then I had one guy just go, holy, and that was it. That was just like, wow, I've never heard anything like that before. And I went, yeah, this is what I think I'm going to build a movement around, these 12 ethos tenets. And I don't know where it came from, and I don't know how it got on the paper, but that has led to more men changing, and myself included, because I will revisit that once a week. Every
Mm.
time a men's group of any of in my organization opens, they read that. And then every one of the men goes around and talks about which one is most prevalent in their lives,
Wow.
which one they need, or which one they're rubbing up against, or which one is troublesome or challenging. And so it's really given us a framework. It's given us something to, it gave us, the men, the structure that the masculine provides and that we want to provide. But it gave us something to come back to over and over and over again. It gave us a guiding light. And so that's why I love it. I've got it, framed in a poster and sell it framed in a poster. And guys all over the world have it up in their offices and in their homes.
Wow.
And I say, if you're troubled, if there's challenge in your relationship, if there's challenge with your woman, if there's challenge at work, if there's challenge with your children, if there's challenge in your heart, go look at the ethos and remind yourself that this is who you are and this is what you do.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you, Traver, for
Thank you.
all of the women listening who, number one, just want to listen to you more. Number
Mm.
two, do those baby repetitive steps for their men. Where, you know, Where can they find your work? And I'm like, I should probably buy a book, but I should probably buy your book
Mhm,
for my man. But I'm no, 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 no. That's gonna be too
mhm,
much. I'm gonna do soft and I'm gonna do slow work
mhm,
here is
mhm,
needed.
mhm.
And I'm gonna
Yeah,
use
you
your
can.
phrase, I miss you. I think
Yeah.
that when a woman talks about that's what I teach my women. Talk about your feelings. Do not go about talk about how you feel right now. I'm gonna take my own advice and your advice, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do. So thank you.
Anna, that sentence melts my heart, and it melts my ego, and it melts all the defenses that I have up about why I need to be working this late and why I need to be focused on this and why, and it's just like, boom. Oh, you miss me. First of all, that means I'm missable. Second of all, it's not about me right now. And oh, you just want to love me. Yeah. It's such a beautiful sentence. Thank you.
Mm.
So if people are interested in following my work, I'm at Instagram or on Instagram at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm. You can get my book on Amazon, on Audible, on Kindle, or anything that I do is on manuncivilized.com as well. And I'm not hard to find. And if anybody took something or whoever took something away from this, I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot me a DM on Instagram and I will get back to you. And if you have a man in your life, have him do the same. I love talking to people. I love talking to your guests and all guests and just getting this movement out and getting it in the hands of men because we are so hurting right now for purpose. We talk, I know, and you're going to talk and women will say like, well, where are the men? Where are the men? Where are the men? I also know that in light of what happened in this country yesterday or 2 days ago, there is a man who's going to wake up tomorrow and he's either going to find my work or he's going to find a gun. And so
Mm.
I am hell bent on getting this thing out for a number of reasons. So
Mhm.
thank you for having me on and helping me spread my message.
Thank you, Traver. It was a pleasure.